eyes to the stage. Thank you. So welcome, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Raid the Fridge, to the 139th Raid the Fridge. Thank you. Thank you for making your way to Kickstart Ventures for tonight's Raid the Fridge. It's our 139th. Grabe. Thank you for keeping us alive. Anyway, so my name is Pia Bernal. I am Kickstart Strategic Partnerships Manager and tonight's Fridge Master. So our Raid the Fridge committee has prepared an excellent program for all of you tonight. So let's get started. And at this point, may I call to the stage familiar face, Eliza Mack, the program manager of the NUS Overseas College Program, who has flown into town to bring an exciting opportunity for the Philippine startup community. So let's all hear from her what you guys can do with her. And welcome back to Raid the Fridge, Eliza. The stage is yours.
Thanks, Pia. Can I start? Okay, hi everyone. I'm Eliza. As Pia has introduced, I'm from NUS, in short for National University of Singapore. So I'm here in Singapore, in Manila for the week, and I fly back to Singapore tomorrow. So thank you for the opportunity. I will be presenting about the NUS Overseas College Program, the Philippines chapter. So for those of you who have heard from me, please bear with me. It's the same thing. Just maybe some updates. Okay. Oh, this I have slides. Not this one. Sorry.
Hang on.
Okay, maybe I'll just talk while they're trying to find my slides. I'm from NUS Enterprise, which is a separate entity from all the faculties of NUS. We have about 17 faculties, if I'm not wrong. So the NUS Enterprise focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. So what we do is we groom entrepreneurs and we hope to have more and more founders and people who are supporting the startup ecosystem across the world. So NOC, which is the short form of the NUS Overseas College Program, has been around since 2002. So we've been around for 23 years, and we are currently in 26 locations across the world. And in the Philippines, we are only in Manila. So the Philippines program only just started last year, and until today, we have almost 20 students who have interned at startup companies. So the main objective of the NOC programs is to send NUS full-time students to intern at startup companies or startup enablers across the world. And so, of course, with startup companies and startup enablers in the Philippines, in Manila. So currently I have about 20 students who are looking for internship opportunities for the upcoming May to August 3-month summer program. And I have 4 students who are looking for internship opportunities for upcoming 6 months, July to December. So we run this program every single year. Right now, I have 3 students who are already interning in the Philippines for the current January to June batch. So I have Camille with me. Can you sign up? Yeah, Camille here is with me. He's one of our students who are interning here at one of the startups here in Manila. So this program is open to all faculty, so we have students from different backgrounds. I have a lot of computer science technology students. I have a few data science students. I have some business, some finance, quantitative finance, econs, from all sorts of backgrounds. So come look for me and we can exchange contacts if you're interested in hiring NUS students. Yep. Back to Pierre.
Okay, so apologies for that. So what we'll do is to send you a copy of the slides of Eliza's program that she shared, so you guys can reach out to her directly for any inquiries. So tonight's program, there. So In the Raid the Fridge announcement, we said that trust can become a powerful asset. And tonight's speaker, Malyn Molina, the president and COO of EON, the Stakeholder Relations Group, is here. Will a seasoned communications executive with over 2 decades worth of experience is here to do two things with you, is to help you understand the why and how trust can become a powerful asset for each of you. So I hope this really amazing audience size doesn't mean that trust is an issue for the community, but I hope this session will also help move trust as an abstract for you guys and really understand the value of it for your business. So without further ado, I'd like to call to the stage Malyn. Let's all give her a warm round of applause. Okay. Sure.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Malyn Molina. I think I've been introduced, but I guess the reason why I also wanted to give a little context about myself is that more often than not, before I talk about trust, you need to know that trust usually begins with familiarity. So let's get familiar with ourselves, right? So I already mentioned 20 years of wielding communication in building trust in the fields of corporate reputation, brand management, public affairs, government relations, and also crisis and risk mitigation. So I have seen in that 20 years, ouch, in 20 years, how communication can make or break the relationship of organizations, businesses with their different stakeholders. And why are we talking about stakeholders? Which is why it's also important to you, because we already know that gone are the days that this is a shareholder economy. We have heard this among many, many experts, what we call now as a stakeholder economy, right? Where businesses are expected not just to share or create value for their shareholder, but really consider the stakeholder expectations of creating value for society, for environment, and, create common good or create better impact and purpose. So that is why we're talking about trust, because trust is that currency that allows institutions, businesses like you, no matter how big, how small, to have the license to operate. So, I'm not sure if I need to even speak about this, but we know as well that trust at the end of the day mean brand loyalty, customer retention, right? It can also become a crisis management tool because the more trusted you are, then the easier that you can recover from any crisis or issues that your organization, brand, product, or services can encounter. So before we even get into it, I guess the idea is for me to give you context first on what I'm going to present to you, which is basically the Philippine Trust Study of EON. So EON Group has been in the business of studying trust, understanding trust for the last 25 years, and the Philippine Trust Study is on its 13th year. And what is critical with this new iteration, when we developed this with the Ateneo School of Social Development, we redefined or redesigned the methodology so that it's national survey. So it means the data sets that you're going to be seeing, the statistics, can be standardized. You can generalize the insights of it that will represent the Filipino people. But at the same time, we've coupled it with focus group discussions, meaning we wanted not just to see the numbers, but to have indicative reasons as to what is the story behind when we try to unpack the trust level of Filipinos. And I guess in the 2024 Philippine Trust Study, the headline really is that this is the era of accountability. I know sometimes people will say, I think it's counterintuitive because what we believe for Filipinos is we're trusting. Actually, you will see later that on the survey, we are high trust raters. But when we start digging, that trust is actually very conditional. And you will know then that for Filipinos, The accountability element means is that you need to keep on earning that trust. So it means also for you, it's about consistency, regular interaction, because it has to be reaffirmed and reaffirmed so that you create that reputation. Okay, very serious faces. Are we okay here? All right. But again, before we go into the details of the survey, the statistics, so to speak, when we were designing the Philippine Trust Study and trying to discover what themes that we will have in 2024, I think it's critical to understand the context of that trust. So we asked Filipinos, what are they worried about, right? So if you can see here, it comes from being very personal down to very global things. Filipinos worry about inflation versus wage stagnation, which means connected to that, they're looking at, how they're gonna look at how they're gonna make daily ends meet, meaning from food, health, education, housing, and other basic needs. And also connected to that as well is then it means what's the well-being of me and my family. But it's not to say that Filipinos are very siloed or uninformed. You can see here that there are bigger things that they're also worried about. So intergenerational issues. For example, the older generation worry about the value set, the degradation of the environment, down to maybe the future perspective of traditional sectors such as agriculture, because it means what will happen to my kids and the future generation. The younger generations worry about the older generations' health and financial stability, right? Because Filipinos, we don't really know how to save for the rainy days. Again, not because it's not in our mindset, but really it's because we're really even struggling to just make sure of our day-to-day needs are met. So what does this mean that when we worry that these are the things that Filipinos worry about? These are not conceptual worries. These are actual pragmatic problems. These are real issues, which means that is how Filipinos will look at their expectations of institutions. And when I say institutions, it can be from the lens of government, private sector or businesses, down to the media, to the academe, and even the religious denomination, because the Philippine Trust Index study actually look at those 6 institutions. What you can really see now is that when they talk about trust, it's not a conceptual need, but rather a pragmatic requirement. So, literature also dictates that when you talk about trust, you need to understand people's life satisfaction, because people's satisfaction dictates the quality of trust it will have to each other and to the bigger society. So generally, I'm very happy to see that Filipinos are satisfied with their life. But if you look at the data, it really is because they're satisfied about social connections, which again speaks about, for those that are not Filipino here, that we are actually a collectivist society, right? Our social connection is important to Filipinos. But it's very glaring that what you have seen or uncovered in the FGD is seen at the survey data. There are 3 things that Filipinos are dissatisfied. They would rather have better income or income stability. Basic needs should be met. And the expectation, hopefully, that they will get better public services from government. Okay? So what all this means simply is that FGD survey is that Filipino actually is in a survival mode. So when they talk about expectation about your business, on where you think what are the needs or the problem statement, so to speak, that your business is trying to solve, always look at it from this perspective. that Filipinos right now, regardless of age, geographical location, socio-demographic standing, is in survival mode. That is the big, unfortunate theme that we have uncovered in the Philippine Trust Study. So when you ask yourself about, okay, if I had some issue with my product or services, how should I deal with my customer or my other stakeholders? This is what you have to think of. That Filipinos being in survival mode means that they have narrow priorities, meaning survive the day to day. They have limited means. They recognize that even if they cannot afford the best, the expectation still is that they get their money's worth. They have limited attention because of either long hours or just because of the availability of different information, right? So that's the beauty and also the bane of democratizing technology and information sources. So they really are also the kind that are expecting but not prepared to be disappointed. So I guess when you look at it, maybe on the cultural lens, because of the day-to-day interaction as well with institutions, is why Filipinos will always say, well, resilient, we're resourceful, because we expect institutions around us to disappoint us. Yeah. Yeah. It's not really a low expectation, but it's really more recognizing that institutions and systems fail, right? And later you will see as well, what can we do? Because again, no system, no person, no institution is perfect. So what will be the recovery for that trust? So yes, later you'll see that trust is actually fragile and conditional for Filipinos. But what it also means for us is that trust is malleable. Filipinos are willing to forgive as long as you will show up and recover. So let's look at it first then. So that's the context. That's the context of the day-to-day life. So now let's look at how Filipinos actually define trust. So when we look at trust, we asked Filipinos, for them, what is it? So for them, first is trust is the expectations that others will do their part. So very simple, right? That's why sometimes our trust questions is always conflated with satisfaction, performance. Because at the end, that's the minimum level of trust for us. Just do your part so that our society systems will work. Additionally, trust is relationship. But I want to caution everyone, this is not relational, right? People believe that, oh, kaya that's why we choose the leaders that we choose, or we do, or we choose certain things because of patronage or someone in the family. Technically, no. Filipinos is about relationship, meaning it's a time and time again engagement with an institution, with a service, or with a product. That's why we have what we call may pinagsamahan. It's experience, time and again. And then, as I've mentioned, trust is fragile. What do we mean by this? They expect institutions to fail them, but they have no choice but to trust you because they need for you to work. They need for the Filipinos need government to provide public services. Filipinos need businesses to provide them with basic services or even jobs. So that's it, right? So they have no choice but to trust you, but they also know that that trust might be broken. So that's why it's always conditional. And also, being a collectivist, Filipinos learn their definition of trust through family. Yes. I mean, we're a collectivist society. So how we see the world is defined and started with how we see our family. So this is where the statistics are. So statistically, in statistics, we know that usually in surveys, Filipino are high trusters. I've mentioned that we've looked at it in different institutions. So when we asked Filipinos if they trust, do not trust, an institution, usually the scores are 90 to 80. Rarely that you're going to see it at 70. Why? When you confront a Filipino, would they easily tell you that they distrust you? It takes a lot for Filipinos to say, I don't, right? So there's always that. So, so there's always the perspective that they'll high trust you, but then you will see the context of that trust. So when we look at government, the high trust, but there's a difference. Local government is more trusted than national government. Why do you think that's the case? Earlier, with the context, familiarity, and meaning of that familiarity is the proximity, but also because in their lens, it's the local government that is giving them the services. Mayor made our roads from farm to market, right? Or they're the one who gave us assistance when we needed some hospitalization, while national government agenda feels very abstract. You're correct. So there, it feels very nebulous. When national government said inclusive growth, okay, how do we see that one? Right? Okay, so that's why for businesses, I'll show you later, both we have data. We basically have two approaches of asking the trust of businesses. One is that it's really is already preset. There's 7 sectors that we wanted to see if they trust them. And then the other one's open-ended, and we kind of cluster what types of businesses those are. For health, as you can see, because that is a need for every Filipinos, they don't see or they trust both public and private hospitals. And then for media, you'll be surprised, that's the question of my media friends to us, is that the most trusted still is mainstream or traditional media. And they say, but why are we dying? The newsroom are dying and everyone is thriving in social. You will see again that from the perspective of no choice, consumption doesn't necessarily mean trust. Patronage doesn't necessarily mean trust. Patronage or using of that social is convenient. It's access. But they believe that the traditional media who fights for the underdog ideally have no bias in information sharing are more trusted. Okay? And then, of course, with the academe, they trust them, again, with the lens that everybody needs education. Religious groups, as you can imagine already, the most prominent of the denomination is most trusted. Across the institutions, we know this in the Western lens that CSOs, civil society organizations, NGOs are high trusted. In the Philippines, NGOs have a crisis identity. Filipino doesn't understand what or who is an NGO. So that's why the score there is that it's unknown. Okay? So, as I said, high trusters, but at the end of the day, when we really went into the FGD, Filipinos are willing to share immediately what that means for them. So that's why you will already know that it's a conditional approach to trust. Because for them, if the standard definition of trust is unwavering conviction, for the Filipinos, I'm giving it to you now, but I'm watching. You have to prove that you are worth that trust. So again, if we look at it, I want to go back to the context. Context that when Filipino make choices, these are the considerations that they have before they give the trust on organization. So they know that when they do make choices, it's always a trade-off, right? I mean, contextually, you know this. It's always the struggle of the day-to-day. Past or future, or present or future. Meaning, do I study now or should I work? Because my family needs me to be an earner, but I know for the future it will be good if I have education. Right? So that's a trade-off. You also know that in the diaspora Filipinos. Do I stay? I want to be with my family, but I have to go to give a better life. Proximity versus something vague. I have so many things in my plate. Would I worry about conflict in our territory? Or should I worry about the US politics? They are cognizant of that one, but they know that they have to survive the day to day. So Filipinos make choices definitely because for the welfare of themselves and the family. They know that choices are also limited. So that's why I said earlier, patronage doesn't necessarily mean trust. What do we mean by limited? It can be that for the business, they will say there's monopoly. For example, energy providers, right? You will say, okay, who's the concessionaire in my area? That's a single concessionaire. There's no choice, even if the service is expensive, if the service not good. So it's either monopoly or that they have limited capacity. This is the only thing I can afford. So that's the meaning of limited choices. And the opportunity that you see there is that even if you feel like your competition has the market share, it just also means that you have an opportunity to be a challenger if you provide better services or better product, right? So do not immediately assume that just because they have the market share, it means loyalty. And they also know that choices have different consequences. So meaning for Filipinos, when they buy or choose a product or service, it's not simply just giving you their money. They know that you're impacting the well-being of their family or the well-being of their day-to-day. So there's always consequences for them. That is why they always gonna hope that they made the right choice. That's why I'm telling you it's conditional. They always hope that they've made the right choice given the limited choices that they have. And that these are always trade-offs. They can have it all. And that, as I've shared earlier, they need to trust institutions by they expect the institutions to fail them. Okay, that's why Filipinos like saying that we're resourceful. I think we kind of understand that systems will break, so we figure out how to navigate through it. Okay, so I don't want to belabor this. I think I've been mentioning this in the sense that for Filipinos, it's a guarded conviction. For them, they give you the trust because if they don't, there's so much at stake. Malaki ang mawawala. They also know that why it's guarded is because several times they've been disappointed. Performance have shown that there is failure. Or because there's no choice, wala namang iba. So why is it important I'm giving you all this as a context? Because that will then dictate what the meaning of the trust drivers for institutions such as private sector or businesses. So if you look at it from a laymanized term, it's good, known, consistent. But we look at it from a concept of trust. We look at it from a driver. There are certain categories of criteria. It can be from the lens of behavioral, meaning consistency, expected for you to do what you have done in the past, or it's relational, right? I know someone, or I can relate to them, and other one is cognitive. So this across that one has those lens. When you say known, Filipinos associate it with familiarity and reputation, which is why you need to communicate or do stakeholder engagements because how are you going to be discovered? There's a lens for Filipinos to trust something or someone that they know. If you don't immediately have that reputation, then you build towards it. Good means either you're competent because the expectation is that you at least give good products or service. That's the minimum expectation. Ethical, well-intentioned, open to ideas. Meaning of the open to ideas is that Filipinos want to be heard. Later, I'll show you that when they say, what do I want from the businesses? If you're going to have some failures, what they want at least is that you tell them. The transparency expectation of Filipinos is there. They want to be seen as being heard by the brand, by the business, so that they know that, they matter. So I think because Filipinos know as well that there is choices that are hard earned, they wanted to be seen that they are respected, regardless how small or how big they are. There's the lens of respect, and respect can be seen from the fact that they're being heard. That's why it's open to ideas. Consistent, as you can already see, is that reassurance of future action. So what are the competencies that is needed for trust in business? So we look at it from the lens of who holds trust in business. So this is the one that's open-ended. We told them, just name the brand or company, and then we cluster them, and this is what's going on. Number one is F&B, followed by supermarkets, and then malls, construction, and conglomerates. So why do you think this is the case of when they put names, this is the clustering of the businesses that they trust? Yeah, I actually redacted the name so that it's not going to be biased for you. But look at it. Those are things that they need. Daily touch points for Filipinos. F&B, definitely because of, basic services. Supermarkets, malls, either they are providers of job or because that's where they gather, put their family in. Construction and conglomerate, later with the conglomerate, you'll be seeing that such words as Filipinos recognize things such as nation builders. Oh, I heard this conglomerate is doing a lot of bridges or providing jobs. So there's a component of nation building references for Filipinos. So when you talk about ESG, it's not that the terminology or concepts it's not familiar for the Filipinos. It's just that terms are different that are a little more concrete and a little more practical. But I'll show you later what that means. When we do the survey itself, because I know you will say, what's the randomness of those sectors? Because we want to see if Filipinos are at least familiar on the things that we know is doing innovations or being different in terms of sectors. That's why we inserted for some of them renewable energy sources. Do they know that one? If I put sustainable or eco-friendly packaging companies or natural, organic, plant-based food manufacturers. Somebody asked us, what if they just said, I trust it because they don't understand it? When we dig into their responses, when Filipinos do not understand the business, they will say, I don't know. So the reason why these are high trust is because they recognize it. It may not be that it's accessible to them, but it's something that they appreciate. And then the low trust, as you can see here, is digital payment apps and real estate developers. Why do you think? Again, indication of what I showed you as context for Filipinos. Digital payment apps because there's scams, right? Or for real estate developers, if you are someone who travels to Metro Manila just to get to work, and that means you are what? Spending 4 hours in traffic just because you cannot afford to live in the city, who are you going to blame? Okay, so you can see why I gave you the context. Okay, so this is where I'm telling you from a theoretical perspective. When we look at what is globally recognized as drivers of trust, and it's clustered into behavioral, relational, and cognitive, we're very surprised that Filipinos didn't go for relational. The trust levels that they said is important to them are all on cognitive. Companies should be competent, they should have good intentions, and they're open to ideas. I'm not saying the rest of the drivers are not important, but as you can see, what is the most important, so that's why the numbers are different. So as I mentioned, we also partnered it with FGDs, right? Just again, to unpack what it means. So you can see that these are the expectations of Filipinos when it comes to private sector or businesses. At the minimum, products and services. That's it. Hard-earned money, day-to-day living, survival mode. So when they say they trust you, you have to ensure that your product and service is good or of quality. So again, maybe the relativism there is that what if it's cheap? But no, value for money means that even no matter what is the price point of your product, there's an expectation of value, right? That it should be good and it should deliver. Proximity and familiarity, all of this goes into the conceptual perspective. And that's what we're telling you, where we say that Filipinos are aware. They judge businesses beyond what we see is obvious. They will mention to you that reputation as a good employer. And you'll see later some of the anecdotes there. And then the ESG may not be the word that they use, but there are things that they say in terms of sustainability or social impact, right? So that's the larger society component. So products and services, main expectation, affordability is a factor that Filipino assess when it comes to price versus quality. And then, of course, the longevity. Because for them, if you've been operating long enough, you're matatag, it means either you have good products or if you have good reputation. So that's why you are long-standing. So there's an element of proximity and reputation component to the longevity. Familiarity, and proximity. So mentioned earlier, if you're not F&B, if Filipinos do not engage with your services or your products on a day-to-day basis, that is why you need strategic communication or trust building initiative. Because at the end, first and foremost is that Filipinos trust what they experience. So if your product feels intangible, then you need to be able to communicate the value and maybe look for, communities, ambassadors, anyone that can advocate. And for them, it's always about frequent interaction. They have to experience you time and again for that trust to build. Okay, so reputation as a good employer I'm sure it's not going to surprise you. Correct, generous, and timely payment of salary and benefits. Providing employment and livelihood opportunities. Why super malls are mentioned there is because in their head, one brand from Luzon to Visayas or Mindanao is there. Which means if you have 200 footprint, how many jobs do you generate? So that's part of what they feel like is a good employer. So job generation. And then good and fair, compassionate management. For sustainability and contribution, these are anecdotals. They really mentioned that they wanted Filipinos that have environment sustainability or social sustainability. That's where we see why conglomerates are high. Because when they mention the conglomerates, they will say what are the social projects of those conglomerates. So Filipinos are aware. It's just that sometimes they need to make decisions that will be at the present, will benefit them. So their expectation of you is that it's going to be very pragmatic. What are you going to give to me to make my life easy? So that's a component that you do. And then from the younger participants, definitely DEI is still very important. So yeah, even the announcements and the recall of DEI commitments globally is there. Yeah, so this is really where they go when it comes to the generalization of what it all means for businesses. Fair labor practices and corporate ESG, as you can hear there. Transparency, because they wanted to be heard. So if something is happening, you need to at least explain to them. Transparency also is connected to what we said to you about familiarity. If you don't talk and you're not transparent, then where will be the familiarity if you are not part of their day-to-day? And then public trust in business is that they really look at it that you have to showcase that there is a social impact beyond simply profit for the organization. Okay, so I guess this one is something that you will say is obvious, commonsensical, but it still is worth to mention. What we say that Filipinos detest dishonest businesses. So what does it mean for you to be a dishonest business? So there's so many forms and function. May it be from false advertising, which is why digital payments and e-commerce is an issue for Filipinos because they feel like, I thought I bought a big fridge and then this is how small it is. I mean, that's one. Or the scams. Or at the end of the day, dishonesty as well is from the perspective of unclear terms or excuses, right? When you say, oh, I signed up to my connection for internet, and then after I sign my contract, there are additional charges. That's what they mean by dishonesty, right? Mentioned this earlier, consumption doesn't necessarily equate trust, only because maybe you're the only choice at the moment. So that's an opportunity for everyone here to recognize. So why does trust benefit you? Why we've talked about trust? So I've mentioned earlier that, right, trust is a game changer for you because anyone? Exactly. Trust actually reduces the hesitancy to make a decision, right? So for choice, if they trust you regardless if it's going to be that you're long-standing or new, if there's a level of trust that it reduces the hesitation. You also know that when it comes to trust, war for talent, if you wanted the best, they go to you, right? Customer loyalty, trust as well is that reason for that. They don't necessarily immediately go to maybe something that's bigger, newer, right? So the idea really is that it increases customer retentions, brand loyalty. Earlier, I've mentioned to you that because of trust, it can be a crisis management tool. And you've known that. You can see it in publicly listed, right? So there are those that when there's an issue that is not, when a company is not trusted, you can immediately see how the share value of their stocks will go down. So the idea really is if you're reputable, then you have trust. And when you're trusted, when your reputation is hit, trust allows you to recover faster. Or maybe that because trust will allow your customers and your stakeholders to be more forgiving, knowing, at least by history, by the experience with you, that maybe this is one of those one off incidences that they know that you will make good to recover what have happened. So that's the idea why we're talking about trust. So also, in the context of the Philippines, I know some of you would want global footprint, but in the meantime, let's look at it from the Philippine lens. Filipino really value relationships. So time and again, how they experience you. And you know this, for those who've been doing comms, word of mouth, right? May it be a little more formal word of mouth by doing it through social, or at the end of the day is if you're endorsed by a friend, a family, of experience someone that's close to them. And that also for the perspective of value set, what's culturally intricate with the Filipinos, we have this called pakikisama or utang na loob, meaning if they trust a brand because you've been good to them, the loyalty comes in because they feel like they're indebted to you. That they have to make good to deliver the same value that you have given them. So that's the context of Filipinos, why trust is necessary. And for the startup, it's a great equalizer. So why? Trust is free. You just have to work hard for it, but you don't need major marketing budgets for it. So if your competition can outspend you, outperform them in terms of credibility, right? Trust as well, at least for the startups, is also an investment. Do good now so that they time and again go back to you. And when you started looking for investors, valuation, information drives valuation. But since information is free at the moment, what quality of information is that? So the market has to trust you so that value from investors will be positive. So at the end of the day, that's the reason why trust can be a great equalizer for any startups. And to be able to do that, it's not rocket science that you really look at it from the lens of strategic communication and stakeholder relations. So why do I put stakeholders here? Because I know from feedback when I was talking to the organizers, Malyn, maybe they will not appreciate comms, right? Because for everyone, what is comms? Maybe it's big budget. You do a media blitz, an event, a social media campaign, an advertising. But that's not necessarily the only ways and means for strategic comms, though it is important. But stakeholder relations allow you to build that strategic perspective by simply ensuring that you engage stakeholders that can be ambassadors for you as you build a community of supporters or as you build a community that will endorse you so that you can be discovered as you want to grow and have a bigger market share. So strategic communications, you can already know, can be indirect through the likes of channels and platforms. So maybe mainstream media, you can do it on digital social, or even events and activities like this. But you also know that there are more direct forms of communication, which is why we're looking at least by this terminology, stakeholder engagement. It can be a meet and greet, a regular meetings, a one-on-one. At the end of the day, strategic communication is a strategic management tool because with no communication, you cannot create consensus. When you're doing project management, if you don't communicate well, how will you know if everyone understands where the project is or what is expected from each other? So communication doesn't need to be what you feel like is big campaign. Communication can be one-on-one. Communication can be how you manage your customer relations. Communication can be simply as being transparent with your partners. Yeah? Okay. But if we go back to what the Philippine Trust Study showed you, if we wanted to look at it on how the narrative should be, right? What messages you should show up so that it lands better to your audience. These are the things that you should know, right? That's expected from businesses. Exude competence, because that's the minimum expectation, expertise and dedication to excellence, good intentions. And this is not something new. I remember reading about Amazon, right? That as a communicator, the CEO will say is know your purpose and communicate it well. Because the number one requirement now to be a CEO is to know how to communicate. You ask anyone here who is doing an executive search, that's one of the soft skills now. They're not even calling it soft skills, they're calling it smart skills, right? The way that there is no simple hard or soft power when it comes to diplomacy of government. They're looking at it now as smart power, right? Because with technology, the human component is critical. And proper communication, story thinking, storytelling is unique to us versus what we believe will be the role of technology, AI, and what have not. But again, I think to be brilliant about it and not to look ignorant, we can always just say that not yet. We don't know what it's capable of. Openness to ideas, following ethical standards. Those are some of the things that you can communicate. Right? So these are some of the strategic communication factors. For example, if you can do a thought pieces where you are so that any potential customers and partners will see your benefit. Maybe from a bite-sized content, understanding where your audience would be. Again, consumption and convenience is important, and it can be sometimes experiential events like this. When we look at it from a stakeholder relations, others will see what are some of the most immediate or obvious criteria. We already have SDGs. So if some of your products and services are aligned to that one, why not design your criteria and metrics that is something understood by other stakeholders, especially if you're going to work with government, or you're going to ask for maybe funding because there are several opportunities, that's from green banks and what have not that allows to support for the SDGs. Dialogues and engagements with your regulatory body, your policymakers, or just really the locations, local government unit where you operate. And then potentially a partnership with an institution. Because again, also for trust element, right? The more trusted you are, the more collaborators are willing to work with you, right? Because trust begets trust, the way that money begets money. No, but that's the idea, right? Okay, so to be able to differentiate yourself and to build trust as a startup, always remember the things I've shared with you. The context of the Filipino, which is why the expectation they have on institutions are pragmatic and real life concerns versus conceptual expectation. They know that when they make choices, it's critical both for themselves and for their family. So we know that you need to be able to understand that for your products and services, what does it do for the daily challenges of Filipinos? If you wanted to look at it from the perspective of your products, does it benefit, help protect the Filipinos and the bigger society? And familiarity and proximity, ensure that there's access, right? So how do you ensure that you're discovered, that they understand your product and services, and always have a sustained effort for communication? Because again, if you wanted to grow, you need to be discovered. They need to know where you are. And that can be through, word of mouth. Your customers who are happy with you will be, promoting you. Partners that are happy with you will again turn to others that can collaborate. These are some of the key things that you simply has to remember. So yeah, leading with accountability, where trust is a long-term investment because we do need to earn it day in, day out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Malyn. So now we now start the Q&A with two questions from us. So Malyn, the first question is, so knowing the audience that you have here, and most of them are startups, entrepreneurs, a few conglomerates, how can you track trust as a KPI for the businesses here?
Okay, so definitely start first with what are your parameters in terms of reputation building, because trust is very nuanced, right? So it starts first on maybe in your category or your industry, what are the minimum expectation to develop reputation? And then after that is go beyond that reputation, which is where the expectations of trust comes in, right? So for example, reputation can tell you from the lens that, oh, I'm well known. Okay, so that's the reputation. How do you then turn it into the trust component? What are the things that are known about you? So you have to go back to what's important to your customer or to the space that you're working in. So there's no real one size fits all metrics or KPI for trust. You need to understand what's important to your customer or your segment, and then from there go beyond reputation. As been seen here, the most basic is what role do you give to the Filipinos, to the lives of the Filipinos? What societal impact are you looking at beyond profit? So yeah.
So building on that, so if I'm a CEO of a small company, a startup, so which roles should be part of that early conversations to make sure that they have covered all the lenses that are looking outward, engaging the customers. So when they start to say, hey, let's build trust as a metric, who should be essential in that conversation in a team?
Okay.
So aside from the CEO, who else should be there?
So first touch point, the expectations for you is to deliver on your product or your service. So definitely from an operational lens, who is that, right? So that's part of the trust building. Additionally, because it's a stakeholder economy, you have to figure out beyond your customer who are the stakeholders that's important to you and how best to be able to start engagement or relationship with them. So if it means that it's communication, then make sure that your communication lead have a strategic position or space in your management team, that they are not at the tail end of conversation only when you have crisis that you have to bring in your communication, because transparency is important. So from a customer relations perspective, that should be also incorporated because, yeah, what Filipinos would want is that they will be heard and seen when there's a concern. I remember when we did the Philippine Trust Study when in the lens of healthcare. I remember when we look at, okay, what's important for Filipinos for them to trust health institutions or health providers. I was surprised that they're not even looking at it from a competency perspective. Basically, they even say, one, someone who will explain to me the process, right? Sometimes there's anecdotes there that I went in 15 minutes, barely there, talking to the doctor, and basically telling me, okay, you need an operation. One, because It can be expensive, so there's always a hesitancy. But at the end of the day, what they really need is you respect me enough that you tell me what's happening, right? So that you walk me through that process. So another component of what should be part of that executive team that builds trust.
Okay, the second question before I open the floor. So, what is the biggest or most frequent mistake that businesses make when trying to garner trust from their target audiences and potential customers? So, listen up, mga
So there.
leaders,
So when I
decision makers.
said earlier with the healthcare, Filipinos value transparency. They value communication. If they have a complaint, listen, then apologize, and then tell them what you're going to do. Right? So at the end, at the minimum, they know that it's not a perfect system. No organization or person will not make mistake. But how you recover from that mistake, first and foremost, before the action is explained. They needed to know. And even in crisis situations, we know this from a crisis protocol. What you need to do during crisis is to reduce the uncertainty, because uncertainty means anxiety. So that's the reason why sometimes businesses fail. You don't communicate.
Sige. So time check, it's 8:20 and we said we'll let you go at 8:30. I have space for 2 questions and then bear with us. We'll call back later Eliza to the stage because sorry for the technical issue earlier. So we'll give her back her time. Any 2 questions from the audience? Who wants? Okay. I saw, sir, what's your name? Ollie. And then who will be next? Paul. Sige. So, but if you guys have one question, stick to one question so we can give space for additional question maybe. So yes, Ollie, go ahead.
Hi everyone. My name is Ollie. I am the founder and CEO of Decipher Labs. So I have a question here. Is it okay if I drop names for educational purpose for a business? Okay.
As long as they don't chase us.
Sure. Personally, based on my experience, for example, for real estate. So there's a real estate developer called Pro Friends. So basically, they're the developer of Lancaster in Cavite. So apparently, based on my experience, a lot of homeowners are complaining because of substandard materials. Secondly, is another scenario is Gcash. So they have been like the talk of the town in terms of like um, the people getting scammed. Although, of course, problems arises for these businesses. So with these two businesses, if in case you're the one who's managing those businesses, what are the guardrails or what are the action plan that you can do to rebuild the trust to your consumers, your customers? So that's it.
Okay. Well, definitely when we say initially, right, products and services. So on the first example already, the delivery of service or product is the question. So that's an operational thing that you need to first and foremost solve, right? So what is your recovery there that you are seen as fair to your customer? Substandard, then what does it mean? What's your liability? What are your recovery? Even before communication. But definitely you communicate the process of what you will do. But first and foremost, again, the first there is deliver on what is expected of you. So that's quality product or quality service. For example, for that Gcash, then you have to go into an education because some of, if you know, we are all users of it. We know that there's really a lot of information education that needs to happen in the usage of the platform. So definitely there's an element of education, but for instances that it's not about education, there really is something that have happened. I know that what they do, and we agree that immediate information so that you can know that why there is an outage or some scam is happening, or if it really is a concern or a problem of the organization, apologize and what you're gonna do. Yeah.
Hi. Very interesting PTS. I was waiting for the D, but PTSD pag hindi nakuha yung joke. Okay. Anyway, my name is Paul. I run an incubator, TBI, Technology Business Incubator called Binild Hi-Fi for the College of St. Binild. So one of the things we're looking at, especially for products that are commoditized, is there is an experience design parang framework, 'di ba? So you get to the point it's commoditized, so you turn it into like a service, a product into an experience, right? So I'm going to ask this question in terms of an experience design framework. So you would think listening to this, you want to move people like stakeholder, right? You're saying it's a stakeholder framework. You want to move your stakeholder from one state to another, right? So we call that meaningful outcomes. You would think you want to move from not trusting to trusting. But the interesting part of this survey is that Filipinos actually give in a weird way for free trust as a pragmatic thing because they have no choice, right? So my question is, what would be the movement in terms of meaningful outcome, right? So one of the examples you gave was maybe uninformed to informed, right? So for me, I'm trying to think of what would be the movement in terms of experience design. I want to basically improve the experience, I guess, of the stakeholder. It's not untrusting to trusting because I don't think what that serve that's the interesting part of the survey that the Filipinos already give that for free.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily for free. They give it to you that because it is conditional for them. So the first state is that they trust you, but that's not absolute. It's not blind faith. It is actually an intent, a very clear intent for them to trust you because there is a transaction expected from this trust relationship. You have to deliver what I need from you. So just so that we're clear about that one. Yes, so that's why for others, if it's absolute conviction, for Filipinos, it's an initial state with an expectation that you have to tell me what's the transaction here. And for it to become more than just transaction is that it has to repeat and repeat. Then they will see that the relationship is that you are dependable, you are consistent, and that whatever I've experienced to you now, from you now, is what I will experience from you in the future.
Additional trust to conviction.
Yes.
Correct?
Okay, I can't say no to this. One more question from Vince Tobias.
Thank you.
So Vince,
Vince, a part of it is a comment, no, and the comment is, I think, partially to the question of Paul is there are different kinds of trust, and I'm sure you know this much more than anyone here. There's cognitive trust where it's more practical. Like if I pay Paul to make me a website tomorrow, he will make me a website. But does that mean I really trust him? As if I didn't know him? Now there's another kind of trust called associative trust, and that involves something like does this person or institution have my interest as priority? So it's kind of different. So all of us might trust BDO, BPI, any other bank because we know if we put our deposit there, it'll probably be there in the coming year. But there are relative differences in the level of associative trust that I have for each one of them, and so I gravitate to one or the other. So I just wanted to add that.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why we said here it's going to be about value set. But Filipinos have a very pragmatic values. So when we look at it, because unfortunately, 90% of the Filipinos are struggling. So when they look at the values of how they will associate trust with you, those are the things that they say that, oh, this conglomerate is helping nation building, right? Because they provide infrastructure, regardless if that infrastructure is paid for, but in their lens, that public infrastructure is important for the day-to-day, right? So when they say for the younger ones, they actually, in anecdotes that we heard during our FGDs, they will say that, we understand greenwashing, or we understand that you only do DEI during Pride Month, but I've never seen if there is any position for you in your employee pool that you do it really regularly. Filipinos actually are not blind. They are aware. It's just that at the end of the day, they need to first and foremost address the most basic needs before it goes higher to something that is bigger and for the greater good. At the minimum, because they're in a survival mode, what you do for them now is the first and foremost decision that they need to have.
Yeah, that's more like the cognitive trust. Associative trust would be stickier. Yeah, because I trust you because of the halo effect and all. Sayang, it's 8:30 flat. Okay.
But
Offline na lang.
thank you, Vince. But Malyn, sorry, MC host, privilege. So I've heard a phrase before, and I found it interesting in the startup space that Filipinos have a high tolerance for broken things. And I saw your results that familiarity ranks high. Does that have anything to do with that tolerance for broken things? Like rather than embracing something new that works, they will still gravitate towards something that is familiar, but not necessarily the best option. So have you heard that before?
That's assumptions that they have an option. That's why we said, right, the Filipinos really have limited choice. So I don't want to generalize because I don't know the context. For example, when they say better things, but they can afford it, right? Does it fit what they need now? We may need to check our privilege when we say that Filipinos like broken things, right? We say that during election. But what we don't recognize is what does Filipino, an everyday Filipino, need now? Why somehow there's certain patronage that we do not agree with.
Awesome. So I guess from Malyn's talk, there's really a lot of work to be done in educating everyone on what trust can do and what are the components and what leads to someone to trust a brand. Thank you so much, Malyn. I hope it was very educational for everyone here in the audience. But before I let you go, let's all welcome back to the stage Eliza. We want to make sure that she's heard. She flew in from Singapore, so let's just give her 5 minutes. Maybe what she's offering will really be a good addition to what you guys are doing as a business operator. Thank you.
I think this slide, I hope it increase trust. I was saying, oh, okay. Yeah. So I will skip this slide for now. So like I said, I'm from NUS Enterprise. For those who just came in, my name is Eliza. From NUS Enterprise. And NUS Enterprise is the innovation and entrepreneurship arm of NUS, which is separated from the faculties, but we work with all faculties. So how it's being developed is there are three key pillars. Technology transfer, which is where all the IPs and deep tech related things are happening. Enterprise Academy is where all the academy related programs like the NOC program is under. And also the last one is ecosystem development, where Block 71, if you've heard of Block 71, which is our accelerator and incubator, is actually belongs to ecosystem development under NUS Enterprise. So this is the program that I run in the Philippines, and also I also run the NOC Indonesia program. So we focus on cultivating entrepreneurial talents. So I'm sure you can recognize some of the startups. So all of these startups are actually founded by NOC alumni. So you can recognize Shortbag, Carousel, Bacosphere is there. It's based in the Philippines. PetSnap is also another unicorn. And also, yeah, a few others. I haven't updated this slide for the longest time, so there are actually more. E27 is there. Okay, so we have had more than 5,000 NOC alumni so far, and we have the alumni come back and then started companies. So in essence, this is what the NOC program is about. It's an entrepreneurial experience programs through intensive 3, 6, or 1 year internship. For Philippines, we only have 3 months and 6 months. And then it's full-time internship with startups and startup enablers. For 6 months, we have them go to classes. Yes, and it's open to all students, which means just now I mentioned, we have students from all faculties. So these are all the locations that we send students to, and Philippines is there. Yeah, so we have a lot of locations, especially in the Southeast Asia region. I run the Indonesia and the Philippines program. So you can see, if students get to choose, they will want to go to these places. So my biggest challenge is having them to come here. Yeah, so please help me by providing opportunities for our students. Okay, so this is the Philippines program, 6 months, January to June, July to December, 3 months, May to August. So the next batch that I am getting companies for is this coming May and this coming July. And yes, we work with Ateneo as on an exchange basis. So we will not only send NUS students to the Philippines, we also receive students from Philippines in NUS in Singapore to do the same exact thing. Yeah. So the more we have this opportunity, the more we have students doing cross-cultural knowledge and skills. Yeah. Okay, so these are the sectors. I think everyone is here. Okay, I'm not going to go through too much. And students are looking for all these business functions roles to support and learn from. Yeah, you can see the UNSDG goals there because everyone wants to create more impact and impact-related solutions. Okay, so this is the timeline. Right now we are here, May and July 2025. So those are the exact internship periods. So if you want more information, you can contact me and I can send you the one info sheet that has everything that I just said. So yeah, this is the requirement. I just need companies to give them the full experience and of course have this cross-cultural exchange. And then there is a minimum stipend of 5,000 pesos a month per student. Yeah, I don't think that's a very, very high amount, I hope. Yeah. Okay, so this is my contact. And I'll just leave you to network. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Eliza. Let's all give Eliza a warm round of applause. And finally, before I let you go back to raiding our fridge and still getting some of the pizza, please help us improve the way we run Rate the Fridge by taking a picture of the QR code so we can hear from you. Give us your most candid feedback. That's how we iterate Rate the Fridge to what it is today. When we started, we were just 60 to 80 people, self-service. Now there would be months that there's like fancy catering. But from time to time, you would like to go back to our roots. So anyway, final announcement. Next month, March, is a special Raid the Fridge. It is our anniversary month. We are turning 13 years old next month. So, and it'll be our 140th Raid the Fridge. But you have to take note that next month's Raid the Fridge will not happen on a Thursday. It'll happen on a Tuesday, March 25. So if you're in Luma, you will get an invitation. But otherwise, check back in from time to time. Just Google Luma Raid the Fridge and it'll serve you the link to our page. Just subscribe para you don't get overlooked. So ayun, thank you so much everyone. So the program has ended. Go make 10 new friends, raid the fridge, and yan. Salamat.